Hi, I'm Tom Newman. I'm an editor at Stratford Crier, and I'm here with Jason Perillo in this edition of Stratford Conversations. I'm very pleased to be with Jason today. He is running for state senator in the 21st District, serving Shelton, Monroe, Stratford, and Seymour. Jason has served as a state representative in Shelton since 2007. Much of his work has been focused on economic redevelopment and bringing funding to the Shelton area. This has included grants for riverfront development, industrial park infrastructure, and reconstruction of the historic Bridge Street Bridge between Shelton and Derby. He has spent his career in the healthcare field, and this includes his efforts to cut retirement income taxes and improve access to healthcare. Welcome, Jason.
Tom, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My first question on my list of questions for you is, if you win this state senator election, what are your main objectives? What do you hope to achieve?
Yeah, I think more than anything else, what we've seen and what I'm hearing from voters is that their biggest concern, and actually it's mine as well, is affordability. And we can address that in a number of different ways, and I'll sort of take them one at a time. First and foremost, and this is obviously largely for seniors and retirees, here in Connecticut, we do still have an income tax on Social Security and on pensions. Most states do not. There is an opportunity that we have missed here in Connecticut to take care of our retirees and make it an easier place to live in your later years. So I have historically and will continue to advocate for the elimination of all taxes on Social Security and pensions. So that's one thing when it comes to affordability. The other I hear, in fact, perhaps even more than that, is in relation to utility costs. There are short-term and there are long-term ways we can address that, but the short-term ones are very, very direct. If we looked at our bill, you'll see that there is what's called a public benefit charge. Mm-hmm. And that is comprised of a number of different state fees. I'll call them hidden taxes, quite honestly, that's what they are. And I believe that we are at a time right now where we can and should eliminate those public benefit charges. They're a significant part of our utility bill, and it adds up. I mean, I have constituents who have three-figure public benefit charges every single month. That's real money, and it adds up, especially if you're on a fixed income. So that's something that needs to go. The third thing that I would focus on and will continue to focus on when it comes to affordability is in local property tax relief. I think of my dad. My dad's 82. The two biggest expenses he has in a given year are the property taxes on his house and the cost of electricity and heating. So that's it. That's the ball game for him. So we talked about utility costs, but when it comes to property taxes, there is a role for state government, and that is largely in the funding of local education, very specifically special education costs. Mm-hmm. So if the state mandates those services, however, shifts that cost onto the municipality. So what does that mean? It means higher property taxes. So I believe that the state needs to be very, very aggressive and very, very focused and meeting the financial requirements brought about by those mandates for education. So the state does have a role in but modulating local property taxes, and I think that's the way that they should do it. So those are my priorities, again, generally speaking, all related to affordability.
Yeah, it's very succinctly put, much appreciated. How difficult will it be to pass those initiatives, and how much reliance on bipartisanship do you think you'll need to get those initiatives put through?
Oh, absolutely difficult and absolutely reliant on bipartisanship. I've been at this a while, fortunately, and it has really enabled me to work across party lines. Everything I've accomplished in the legislature for my constituents has been with a partner on the other side of the aisle, be it funding for infrastructure projects like you mentioned, be it legislation related to economic development. Farm bills come to mind, which have always been relevant in my district. Anything related to the riverfront. Every single thing that I've accomplished has been because I've had a Democratic ally working with me. This whole thing is about relationships, right? I mean, everything you know, that we do is based upon whether or not you can build bridges across the aisle. And I've had no choice but to do that, and I've done it very willingly. And it has served me well, it has served my constituents well. So yeah, you have to do it. It's the name of the game.
Yep, good to know. Do you think you will have any different challenges in the Senate that you may not have seen in the House?
Actually, in many ways, they'll be the same. It's interesting. So, what's the old joke? The enemy isn't the other side of the aisle. When you're in the House, the enemy is the Senate. So it's not uncommon, and I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it's not uncommon for the House members on both sides of the aisle to be on the same page with something, but the Senate not to be on the same page, and vice versa.
Interesting.
So, I walk into the Senate on day one. In many cases, I have those relationships already from my experience, but I certainly have relationships in the House on both sides of the aisle. So, whereas, maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, I could get a bill out of the House because I had relationships there, but then struggled in the Senate. That sort of turns on its head because I've got those House relationships, and I've already started building Senate relationships, and will only build stronger ones in the months ahead. So, sure, do some of the same challenges exist? Absolutely. Will it be any harder? No. I think in some ways, I won't use the word easy, but it might be smoother. Let's put it that way.
Yes. I didn't write these questions, so please forgive the next one. In terms of your achievements, and of which there are many in the House, are there any items that you regret not getting done, or that there are achievements, there are goals, there are things you wanted to do but simply just couldn't get done for whatever reason? And if you could just elaborate on what those reasons were in Shelton.
Yeah, so I think more than anything else, and the jury's still out because there's still opportunities to do so, there is still additional funding that I would like to line up for the construction of a commerce park in Shelton that's really going to be the next economic driver of the town, where you're really going to see commercial development. We've already gotten, quite honestly, almost $4 million for that. We need another round of money. So that's obviously something I'll continue to pursue. Very much like what Senator Kelly has done. He has done very, very well for Stratford, and I've been a good partner to him, and he's been a great partner to me. But that work is never done. Yeah. So you look at opportunities to move forward. I've been able to fortunately work with Senator Kelly and with Mayor Hoydick while she served up in the legislature. So those relationships, again, you talk about relationships serving you well, they'll continue to do so.
Fantastic. What could you say to those folks outside of Shelton, in Monroe, Stratford, and Seymour that you haven't represented to date, that will make them believe that you'll treat everybody equally and that you don't have a special place in your heart for the folks at Shelton?
No, it's funny. So when you look at Shelton and you look at the surrounding communities of Seymour, Monroe, and Stratford, we have far much more in common than we do have not in common. Many of the issues, we share a riverfront, we share the same economic development concerns. In many ways, our populations and our residents are very similar. Whether I'm knocking doors in Shelton or Monroe, Seymour, or Stratford, a lot of the concerns I hear are the same concerns. I'll take an exception, perhaps. Shelton doesn't have an airport. Stratford certainly does. So, obviously, I would continue to be very concerned about any potential expansion of that airport. Kevin Kelly worked very, very hard to ensure that Stratford leaders had a voice in any changes to the airport. And quite honestly, I know that that's been under attack, largely by legislators from Bridgeport. So I'm acutely aware of that. And I would continue to work hard to make sure that there was no encroachment into the rights and the autonomy of the town of Stratford. So the challenge is knowing the issues that are important to folks in those communities. I have also very, very strong relationships with the local leaders in the towns. Like I said, I worked with Mayor Hoydick when she was in the legislature. I've become very, very close with Terry Rooney up in Monroe, very specifically related to his challenges, his town's challenges after the flood in August. And I've, as somebody from Shelton, I've always been very, very close with the folks in Seymour too. So it's all about understanding what the community needs and working with the local leaders.
Yeah, thank you for that. Specifically with respect to the youth in these different areas, how do you plan on supporting them in terms of job creation, in terms of culture creation, in terms of keeping them here at home with us?
Well, the first thing you can do to make sure that a recent college grad or someone getting involved in the trades, that's another one that's actually kind of a challenge, is creating opportunities for them, be it primarily career opportunities. So if we have a vibrant economy, that is step one to making sure that our young people stay here and work here and raise a family here and ideally retire here. I look at my daughter. She just turned 11. I would like for her to, regardless of what she does from an education perspective, if she goes to college, if she chooses another avenue, I want her to be able to stay here close to her mom and dad. Right. And we do that by creating opportunities, job opportunities. That's step one. You have to be able to do that, and we build that. We do that by creating a vibrant economy and by creating an environment where it's actually affordable to start a business here. It's affordable to work here. And like I talked about, and I don't want to rehash things I've already discussed, but property taxes are a key component of that.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you for that. I think your opponent has mentioned a rethinking on the child tax credit as a form of economic relief and economic development. Do you have any specific thoughts on that? And if that's not a focus for you, what alternative solutions would you?
Connecticut already has a child tax credit, which has been very helpful to a lot of families. I am not averse to that. I'm happy for those families who are able to take advantage of it.
Great. Okay. Still talking about the issues primarily focused on youth, we have a substance abuse issue.
We do.
In our area, and we also have gun control issues. Mm-hmm. Could you speak a little bit about your thoughts on those two areas in particular?
So, I guess, like you mentioned, I appreciate you saying it, my career has been in healthcare. I've actually spent the last 9 years very specifically in mental health and addiction.
Okay.
So I'm very acutely aware of the challenges faced in our communities. I'm also acutely aware of the stigma involved in people seeking help. And I think that it is incumbent upon local leaders, state leaders, to help break down those stigmas and encourage individuals to seek the help that they need. That's sort of a social component of what we can do as leaders. Another thing that I'll mention that I feel very passionate about is what's called parity. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So when I say parity, I mean parity in compensation to healthcare providers. Here in the U.S., but obviously in Connecticut, despite the fact that there are federal laws related to parity in terms of compensating surgery and medical issues in much the same way that we compensate mental health issues, that the reality hasn't caught up with the law. So one thing that I've been very passionate about is ensuring that our health insurers are adequately covering and compensating for the mental health benefits that individuals in Connecticut need. So if individuals struggling with addiction, if individuals challenged with mental health disorders have access to the care they need, I know that those individuals will be much better off. So, I could talk about this for a long time. It's something I'm very, very passionate about.
Mm-hmm. Good to know, and gun control.
Yeah, I think that what we've seen here in Connecticut is a state that has been very, very aggressive in its gun control laws. I would argue that it is probably one of the most aggressive in the nation. And I think that, I think that we are at a place right now that has worked in many ways. I think the other, I mean, and I'll mention this because I think it's important too, much of the gun crime that we see in Connecticut is obviously in our urban areas, and it is largely handgun related and trafficking related, and I think that we need to be very, very serious about that.
Do you have any particular proposals in mind that you would run with if you're elected?
We've seen a lot of proposals over the years, and I feel as though none of them has really gotten truly serious about, like I said, very specifically gun trafficking in our urban areas. So anything that I would endorse would include increases in the penalties as they relate to gun crime. I think we need to get serious about the penalties.
Oh, the penalties.
Yeah.
And what about the background checks? Any thoughts on improving background checks? Yeah,
Connecticut's pretty strong on that. And there was a period of time where there were actually pretty significant delays in the background check process. That is actually what I'm hearing from folks. I'm not a gun owner myself, but what I'm hearing from folks is that those delays have sort of gone away, and the state police have caught up. So I kind of think we are where we need to be.
Okay, great. Good to know. You mentioned affordability earlier. Yes. Do you have any particular proposals in mind around affordable housing?
Yeah, so I think that so unfortunately, our affordable housing laws right now in the state of Connecticut are broken. And I'm going to tell you why. Our affordable housing laws have been in place for decades, and they have created very little affordable housing. What they have done is created a situation whereby developers can weaponize those affordable housing statutes to get zoning approvals for projects that are far more dense and far more intense than any right-minded planning and zoning commission would ever approve. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing up in Oronoque is a great example of that, whereby a developer is manipulating statutes in order to get approvals, essentially strong-arming land use commissions to get what they want. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's just about making money. So we can see where our current affordable housing laws have failed us. What we could be doing is offering tax incentives to utilize old structures, in some cases, structures that weren't always residential, mm-hmm. but that were commercial or that were industrial, that in some cases are actually blighted properties, mm-hmm. and provide tax incentives so that developers can take those properties, turn those properties into affordable housing opportunities, and at the same time eliminate a blight. Yeah. So that's really the opportunity that we in Connecticut have not taken advantage of. It's what I feel has been a lost opportunity and something that I've advocated. But I will say this, and I want to say it very, very clearly, the laws that are in place right now do not work. And in fact, in many ways, they're unfair and punishing to the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you for that. Very comprehensive answer in my opinion. It looks like we are running out of time, so I'd like to ask you if you have any closing remarks.
No, very simply, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity to serve the residents of Stratford, Monroe, Seymour, and Shelton.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being with us, Jason. It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Tom.
And thank you all for being with us on this Stratford Conversations.